Hello everyone and welcome back to Pepper's Pages. Today I wanted to do something a little differently. Usually I review a whole bunch of books at once or maybe a few at a time by different authors. Today I want to talk about one author in particular. Joe Hill's an author that I happened to come across on my own. I had no idea that he was a spawnling of Stephen King. To be honest with you, I like his work better than I do King's. Of course, there are a lot of story of King's that can never be topped, but as a writer in general, I think that Joe Hill has something that I was missing from King's books. The way I initially found out about him was right out of high school, or right before I graduated high school in 2014. The movie Horns starring Daniel Radcliffe came out. I'd watched it with a friend and honestly enjoyed it so much that when I saw his copy in the store, I was like, oh my gosh, I had no idea that it was based on a book, because I guess back then I never paid attention to the credits. Horns follows Iggy, who is being accused of murdering his longtime girlfriend. He wakes up one morning and learns that he is growing horns that are capable of persuading people to do things and also brings out the worst in them. It's a really awesome mixture of mystery, thriller, and horror. Something I really enjoyed about it was the way that Hill was able to sneak in some devil references or imagery into the story without it being so obvious that it took me a while to actually pick up that it was there. Another really cool thing about it is in the end, Hill has added in The Devil on the Staircase, which is a short story by him. And the layout of the text is really cool because it's written as if it's a staircase. I ultimately loved this book because I felt so much for Iggy. He was going through a really horrific ordeal, and honestly, I commend the way that he continued pushing through to clear his name and figure out what really happened. It's just really a nightmare situation all around. The second book that I picked up by Hill was Nosferatu, and this guy is a pretty good chunk, honestly. I read this over the course of a few days, and that is very surprising for me because it takes me a good while to finish something like this. Nosferatu follows Vic McQueen as she learns to use this ability that she has where she can ride her bike to a nearby bridge that is close to her home, and if she thinks really hard about going somewhere else, anywhere in the world, she is able to ride across the bridge and come out the other side in the place that she has been thinking about. Where she gets into trouble is she meets Carl Manx, who has a terrifying Rolls Royce and a weird fixation about Santa Claus. You learn that he takes children and transports them in this Rolls Royce to Christmas Land, where they are stuck forever, and Vic has to find a way to get them out. Some of the imagery in this book is absolutely terrifying. When you find out as the reader exactly what Charles's power is, it's petrifying. Just the way it's laid out in the book is very stressful. It is very long, I will say that. I feel like I remember, it's been several years since I've read this, but I feel like I remember there were points where I just wanted it to move on. The pacing slowed down just a little bit in spots, but watching her go from a kid to an adult, fighting this power is really, really wonderful. Heart-Shaped Box is another really great one. I wish that Hill had more novels out because I've read pretty much every novel he has, including the short stories. I guess I have, because the only things I haven't really read are his graphic novels and short stories that are a part of compilations of other authors. Judas Coin is a has-been rock star who collects very, very morbid items. He lives with his girlfriend and one day receives a package that is a heart-shaped box, and inside of it is an old suit. He takes it in, thinks no harm of it, and slowly learns that it is haunted by an old man. This old man has no well wishes for Judas and is out to absolutely destroy his life and kill him. This is probably lower on my list of favorites for Hill, honestly. I enjoyed it a whole lot, but I don't know, there's just something about like the fireman, horns, Nosferatu that really stood out to me. This is a really good like ghost story though. I really did enjoy this. I think the scariest part for me in this was the seance scene when his girlfriend looks in the mirror, and I don't know what I was expecting, but it definitely wasn't that. I listened to Strange Weather probably about a year or two ago. It is most likely down toward the bottom of my list because I didn't feel like the stories were as strong. Essentially, some really weird weather starts happening where it's not raining anymore, it's just like these shards of ice. The 4 stories involved follow different people and like their experiences during this like wild like anomaly of like a storm. The short stories in this are Aloft, Rain, Loaded, and Snapshot. To be honest with you, I remember a little bit about each one, but I couldn't tell you what came from each book. I did like the whole premise behind it with the weather and like what it was doing. My favorite collection of short stories by him would have to be Full Throttle. In this we have Throttle, which is one that he wrote with Stephen King, and I enjoyed that one quite a bit. Just as like a thriller more than anything, because I don't believe anything supernatural happens in it. I think it's just about a group of bikers who are traveling, and they begin being stalked and terrorized by a semi-truck driver. Then there's Dark Carousel. This follows a group of kids who are on a pier at like a little, I wouldn't say like a festival, it's kind of like a carnival it seems like, and they ride a carousel and strange things start happening. They start like hallucinating and just being super afraid of something they're not sure is even there. The way it ends is very interesting. Like honestly, that I marked as one of my favorites in this collection, just because it was so different from anything that I had read before. There's Wolverton Station, which is about a man on a train who believes that another passenger is a werewolf. Then we have By the Silver Water of Lake Champlain. This is 2 kids finding something very strange on the beach, completely unsure of what they're looking at. I don't exactly remember like everything that happens in this story, other than like they're just trying to protect this thing. I believe that a movie was made about it. Then there is Fawn. It follows a man who has joined this expedition to go poaching, but it's like not your regular hunting scenario. The owner of this house has a tiny door in like at the top of this staircase, I believe it is. At a very specific time in the day, they are able to go through this door that the owner has in the house, and it takes them to another land where they are able to hunt for fawns. Honestly, that one I really enjoyed just because of the outlook on like hunting for sport and things like that. You do feel bad for the fawn. Like, I love that they had their own perspective to it, you know? Then we have Late Returns, which is obviously going to be one of my favorites in this. I actually think that this is my favorite. It follows a man who is running a bookmobile for a local library, and on his runs, he runs into these people who come to him, and they have books that are overdue, and he slowly begins to realize that these people have passed on and are coming to him to return their books. I don't know, I love the supernatural. I think it's so much fun, and to mix books in with this, especially like to have a bookmobile like that you're running, that would be a dream job. Then we have All I Care About Is You, Thumbprint, then Devil on the Staircase, and I've talked about that one. It's just a really interesting story about this guy who's been told that if he goes down the staircase he might meet the devil, and he does. And just the layout of the story is so interesting because it looks like a staircase all the way through, going different directions, and I believe at the end of it, it is just one long staircase, and it's just very interestingly like laid out. Twittering from the Circus of the Dead was very interesting, mostly because of the concept. It was a teenager doing a Twitter thread talking about this crazy event that's going on in a circus where there's just some absolute mayhem, and I don't think that I was really into the story itself, and I think it would have been interesting had it not been like a Twitter thread, but it's a fun way to like play around and tell a story, you know. We have Mums and In the Tall Grass, which was a very gruesome but interesting story that I enjoyed a whole lot. It follows this brother and sister. The sister is pregnant. They're trying to figure out what to do. They're traveling to go see some family so that she can stay with them for a while. They stop on the side of the road for a minute and they hear this kid calling out from like this wall of grass that's just growing. And there's a bunch of cars like in the parking lot, and they go out and the sister tries to find them and she gets lost in the grass. When you think it can't get any weirder, it absolutely does. I watched the film for it and enjoyed it a whole lot, but I do feel like there was a bit missing from it, but it wasn't anything that really ruined it. This is honestly like a terrifying story. And finally is You Are Released. 20th Century Ghosts is the most recent short story collection that I read by Hill, and it has Best New Horror, 20th Century Ghosts, Pop Art, which follows a child who has a friend that is air. He was like a balloon of some sort, but he was like a real child who could talk and walk around and stuff, and they were always so worried he was gonna pop. I don't know, that one was very weird, but it was fun. It's sad, but fun. You Will Hear Locusts Sing, in which a child turns into a bug. That one was very gross. Abraham's Boys, Better Than Home. The Black Phone, which if you haven't seen the Black Phone movie, I highly recommend it. It was very good and added so much more to that short story. And I also love the short story. Like, it's just a very, very like stressful situation, but the way it ends and who comes together to make it end is just like, it was just very beautiful. In the Rundown, The Cape, Last Breath, Deadwood, The Widow's Breakfast, My Father's Mask, which is a child who, I took it as this child is starting to see that their parents aren't who they say they are, and everyone has a mask that they wear. Basically, that's what it is for me, but I guess you can interpret it in many different ways. And then Voluntary Committal. There are a lot that I just named off and didn't go into detail about, and that is mostly because I either wasn't all that into them, or I couldn't remember like a lot about them. I've also grabbed the first Lock and Key Master Edition. This thing is really beautiful. I honestly enjoyed this a whole lot. I can't wait to get the rest of them. I really like the art in it. I like the storyline. I think it's very strange and very interesting. This master volume includes Welcome to Lovecraft and Head Games. I've started the show because this interested me so much and I thought it was fantastic, but it just didn't meet my expectations for it. So for now, I'm just going to look forward to getting the rest of this collection because it's a lot of fun, and I actually might reread it soon because it's been a while. And finally, we have The Fireman, which honestly has to be my second favorite book. I would rate these top three probably Horns, The Fireman, and Nosferatu. Nosferatu is probably second just because of its length. Like, I would love to read that story again, but it is such a commitment to like sit through again that I just don't feel up for doing it anytime soon. I know that The Fireman is also really long, but it felt like I ate through that a lot faster. In The Fireman, there is this plague going around that causes people to ignite from the inside, and if they become out of control in their emotions, they can catch on fire, and everything and everyone around them is in danger. So our main character, through a lot of obstacles, ends up with a group that is with the fireman, and she learns that he is just a man who wears a fireman's outfit. He's not actually a fireman, but he does possess abilities that correlate with fire. A big thing for me about this is I loved Stephen King's Firestarter so much. I placed that in one of my top favorites for him. And while this one felt pretty similar, like with the whole fire abilities, honestly, it's mostly just that. It felt like a whole different story, and I just liked how it was laid out more. It's a pretty hard tie between the two, to just be honest. But I did like that while I was reading The Fireman, I was thinking about Firestarter and just kind of seeing where that inspiration could come from and like how Hill took it and turned it into his own thing. These are all the books that I have read by Joe Hill so far. I know there are a lot of other short stories that I could read by Hill, but I prefer his novels more. I just feel like they're a lot stronger than his short stories. I do hope that he finishes another novel at some point in the future. I would love to continue reading his work. I don't know, for some reason I just have a stronger connection to him than I do Stephen King. I just like Hill's way of writing a little bit more. I think besides like Nosferatu, most of his stories are very condensed and they don't stray as much as like King does in his stories, and that's something I have trouble with when it comes to Stephen King, and I'm certain that I've said that in every video that I've ever mentioned about him. Even in Nosferatu, it doesn't feel like he strays too far from the point just to have some extra stuff going on. If you have read any of his other short stories that are not included in what I have mentioned here, please let me know. Because I would love to read more of his work. I just don't know where to start when it comes to things that are included with other authors' works. This was a really last minute video, but I enjoyed getting to talk about it. I'm sorry if this video has been incredibly rambly. It was very last minute. I was going to talk about Nat Cassidy today, and when I started pulling his books from the bookshelf, I saw Joe and I decided to talk about him. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you have all had an incredible day, an even better week, and until next time, happy reading.